Everyone, it's LS, and this is going to be the patch 9.24 notes rundown. We're just going to get right into it. Philios is in this patch. However, I've talked about him elsewhere, and until he actually ends up on the balance change list, he just has so much stuff going on with him that I'm not going to bother talking about him here. Already did a first impressions video. Everything that I've seen about him elsewhere is looking pretty good, so we'll see how he ends up shaping up as future patches unfold. And given the history of other champions like Sylas, Akali, Aatrox, Aurelia, and all those great champions ending up inside of many balance change lists, I expect nothing less for Philios in the future. Akali, hitbox, remove the hitbox behind her, which is targeted at the pro scene, as well as the rank 5 minion of monster damage, 33% bonus magic damage to 25% bonus magic damage. Perhaps there's some interaction here where typically Akali, unless she is overfed, maybe this ends up slowing down some side lane wave clear or something in that regard, but you're going to have to head over to Freaks, patch note rundown, for maybe some exact specifics on what this could end up meaning. This seems like a extremely specific kind of change. Bonus minion and monster damage down by 8% just does seem very random. It's not going to be what prevents high MMR players or pro players from picking Akali, and if you're in lower MMR as is, you probably shouldn't be picking Akali in the first place. Anyways, Amumu, Q cooldown decreased early, Q bandage toss 12 to 8 seconds to 10 to 8 seconds. This is a really interesting change, and it's mostly interesting because I feel like Riot actually had a fantastic opportunity to make Amumu potentially legitimate when they ended up changing the passive and a bunch of other things with Amumu, only to undo it one or two patches later, if my memory serves correctly. The bandage toss, being able to have the rank 3 bandage toss now at rank 1, yes, it's a buff. Is it what's gating Amumu from competitive right now? No. And the reason that it's not what's gating Amumu from competitive right now is because inside of a gank, this number is already so high, you're not going to look at this and be like, man, I really wish that I just had 2 seconds off the cooldown at rank 1. That's really going to change all of Amumu's ganks. Now, what it could end up doing is that maybe in the mid game, it does obviously prove to be somewhat beneficial, but Amumu has so many other things going on with him right now that, yes, in low MMR, he's probably completely fine. At high MMR, there's other champions that do what Amumu does, but better, and just simply changing the Q bandage toss in this manner is not magically going to make Amumu some sort of a godly champion. And I know a lot of people over the last couple of months, especially when the jungle meta typically gets boring, you'll have some Amumu enthusiasts that try to see if Amumu is viable in any way, shape, or form, and it just ends up not being the case. I feel like Riot really dropped the ball on making Amumu potentially viable by undoing all of the changes that they initially did, instead of trying to make him more difficult for the pro scene, rather than just scrapping him altogether and now revisiting him here in 9.24 and decreasing the cooldown on his Q by giving you a rank 3 Q now at rank 1. But at the end of the day, he's still the same champion in the later stages of the game, so it's not really all that impactful, even though, yes, it is a buff, and a buff is something I welcome. Braum. Base health per level and health region increased, W cooldown decreased, cost flattened, resistance ratios to ally and self flattened, R base damage increased, later knockup now lasts longer. These are all massive changes for Braum, who's a champion that has disappeared for a while. So, base stats 87 to 98, and then health region 8 to 8.5. Obviously, this is really nice for Braum. He ends up almost getting a Ruby Crystal at super late game, but he's a support champion, so he doesn't actually go all the way up to super late game. Typically, he doesn't get the same levels as his teammates, so he's chasing after almost a Ruby Crystal in terms of buffs, which is really nice. W stand behind me, 14 to 10 seconds to 12 to 8 seconds is really big. Cost 50 to 70 mana to 40 at all ranks is obviously really good as well. Resistances to ally, 10 to 26 plus 10 to 16% bonus resistances to 10 to 26 plus 12%, so 4% bonus resistances down for the ally. However, resistances to health, 10 to 26 plus 16% bonus resistance change to 10 to 26 plus 36 bonus resistances. This is really big for Braum because typically when Braum is using stand behind me, the ally is not the one that continues getting hit, so the bonus resistances for them outside of very specific 2v2, 3v3 skirmishes, and maybe some stuff late game, which is again, going to be very, very thin spots where that would end up being applicable. Braum is going to be the one that is taking the brunt of everything. So obviously, really nice changes for him here. Glacial Fissure, 150 to 350 to 150 to 450. Now, the key thing to note here is that this is a mid-game Braum buff. He ended up getting 50 base flat damage. However, the target knockup, 0.25 seconds for those hit in the fissure, general knockup for those in close vicinity to 1 to 1.5 seconds at all ranks based on the distance from Braum for the first target hit in the fissure. Every other target hit or within close vicinity is knocked up for 0.25 seconds. This is a very, very big change, and it's a really big buff to Braum, because ultimately what this starts ending up doing is it starts making him merge closer and closer to being able to be picked in spots where you would want that really heavy one-target CC knockup sort of engage that he can even use with more, or he has a lot more reliability, especially now when he has his flash, and obviously getting the base damage added in the mid-game. We're not really going to talk about the rank 3 that comes in at level 16, because it's not really that likely that you get to 16 with Braum, and for somehow, or somehow it's supposed to be meaningful. So in mid-game and early game, the extra CC duration is massive on Braum, and it also gives him a lot more reliability, like I just mentioned, on his initial engage. In the mid-game, however, rank 11 is something that you can talk about. Getting that extra 50 flat damage is kind of nice, especially if you hit multiple targets. Then it ends up meaning that Braum at least is dishing out a little bit more damage. Do I think that magically this means that Braum comes back into the meta? Well, given how some patch histories has been, yeah, Braum might probably start getting a little bit more love, especially because a lot of support players tend to forget that mages exist in bot lane, and hopefully Sir Thomas Kench can get a buff within the next patch or two, and we can just go back to Braumton Kench meta, because I know this is exactly what everyone is waiting for. But not really. Braum still isn't a support pick that I think that can be picked first. He requires coming in second, and obviously I'm referring to high MMR and competitive. With this, for solo queue, there's still way better supports that you can pick at basically every MMR. Diana, visual effects and special effects updated. Lunar Rush and Moonfold now switched keys. Passive now grants attack speed. Okay, so base stats 372 to 420. Monogrowth 20 to 25. Attack damage is up by 4. Passive Moonsilver Blade. Gain 10 to 40% attack speed at levels 1 to 18. Innate casting an ability triples the attack speed Diana gains from Moonsilver Blade for 3 seconds. This is obviously really massive. It means that she can end up getting even higher attack speed than the old innate that was after for her next 3 basic attacks. So, Serenity. Every third strike cleaves nearby enemies for 20 to 250 plus 0.4 ability power. The old one was every third strike cleaves nearby enemies for 20 to 250. Plus 0.8 ability power, additional magic damage, and restored mana. So now Bruiser Diana gets a lot more benefit, and obviously Diana, because of the attack speed steroid, she can actually proc this more reliably in extended trades and whatnot, and so the initial thought that comes to mind is Bruiser Diana is looking better than just a straight-up nuke. Q Crescent Strike costs down from 55 to 50, so she's getting a lot of love in the mana department, obviously to probably make up for the loss of Moonsilver Blade. W Pale Cascade, cooldown 10 seconds at all ranks to 15 to 9 seconds. This is actually really big, getting the 1 second off at the final max rank is really nice, especially once you end up getting CDR. It's always the thing that you realistically want to be looking at. Now, however, having the 10 seconds change to 15, obviously Diana's going to have to be more cognizant of when she's using it inside of lane. Base shield, 40 to 100 total shield, 80 to 200 change to 30 to 90, total shield 60 to 180, losing a little bit right there. Orb ratio 0.2 ability power, total 0.6 ability power to 0.15, so the shields and everything are down. However, 0.1 bonus health, total 0.2 bonus health. So again, more notion of the bruiser type of Diana. Now, this is making me think that maybe she's going to end up in top lane, and that's just what's sort of coming to mind right now. However, casting an ability triples the attack speed. Every third cleaves nearby enemies. So nothing here is saying about champions. So, you know, I mean, you're at an LS patch rundown. Is she a jungler? However, E Lunar Rush, Diana's old ultimate. Now, having this on an E is really big, because again, is she a jungler? Cooldown 25 seconds to 15 seconds to 22 seconds to 14 seconds. So, This is obviously really cool. She's going to be able to have it up more reliably. Well, it's not really that big of a problem because it's Diana's old ultimate. But anyways, cost is also down, even at the final rank. Damage 100 to 220, 240 to 120, but that doesn't matter because she has so much packed into her Q and her she's going to have so much packed into just her passive and obviously her Q spam on an opponent that it's going to be completely fine that it's missing some damage and ability power. Our Moonfall, Diana's old E. Cooldown 26 to 18 seconds to 100 to 80 seconds. That's obviously a little scary. Cost 70 to 100 mana slow, 35 to 55% to 40 to 60%, so it's up at the later ranks for sure. If Diana pulls in one or more enemies, champions, the Moonlight crashes down on her after 1 second, dealing 200 to 400 plus 0.6. This is extremely high base damage. And when you have champions that have really, really, really high base damage, it can be really cool to also have them build just straight AP. But as we're seeing, Diana's losing a lot of ability power basically all across the board. And so because she's losing a lot of ability power across the board and she's getting all of these new gap closes, all of these new things with her passive, wanting to basically stay on top of opponents and constantly keep auto-attacking them, it's really making me think that it's going to be Bruiser Diana that is the direction that she's going to end up going. And it realistically, with having Lunar Rush on E, it's making me think that Diana could actually just be a jungler, especially because of the way that the passive works. Diana pulls in one or more enemy champion, or I just read this, in an area around her, increased by 30 to 85 plus 0.15 ability power for each target beyond the first pulled. Absolutely fantastic. The YouTubers can go and get their montages now of doing insane damage with Moonfall. All in all, I think this is an extremely successful rework because I think it opens up more viable paths for Diana now, especially because the jungle AP item, it's not even just the jungle AP item. I just think AP junglers in general are actually outshining all the other junglers, and that's a byproduct of also the meta that's surrounding them right now. So Diana's going to be in a pretty good spot right there because in terms of AP junglers, there's not really that many that exist right now. You have Karthus, you have Syndra, you have Elise, you have Evelynn, and then you have Gragas. In terms of the really viable AP junglers. And then outside, then you go down a tier, and I guess to an extent you still have like Talia. You have other AP champions that also end up in the jungle, but it would be really nice to get like a bruiser kind of assassin AP champion inside of the jungle, because I do feel like that is one that is missing unless you, again, do count Gragas, but obviously, Diana would be more catered towards that. Garen. Additional E-spins and spin damage decreased. Okay, that's fantastic. Karma. E-base shield increased. I think this is actually a very big change. I think that Riot is trying to nudge that Karma is actually still a real champion after a lot of people dropped her for seemingly no reason after she was changed. I mean, yes, she did end up getting her nerf on the Q, but most Karmas were building the supportive version of Karma, or they were building the tank version of Karma, in which case the AP ratio, yes, it did end up going down, but you didn't have much AP to begin with, and you were picking Karma for other reasons that didn't just have to do with the Q. It was mostly because of the luxury and how much utility she offered to the team. So getting a lot more back into her E is obviously going to be very nice. So Kassadin, cooldown now scales. W mana restore decreased later. I mean, someone lost to Kassadin in silver. That's all that there is to it. I mean, this makes... I think I said this before about a change that I ended up seeing. I guess that they've just decided that Kassadin will not be a champion unless he gets reworked. Because this is just really sad to see. So unless he gets reworked, or unless the items all change, or unless something massive happens to rooms, or all the other champions inside of the game just get hit. In which case, if everyone sucks, Kassadin sucking is completely fine too. There are spots where he can be picked. There's very, very thin spots in competitive, and I mean, solo queue is a kind of a different beast because Kassadin can actually get out of control in solo queue. I do believe there's a few high MMR players that are known for playing Kassadin, but in competitive, there are very thin spots, typically only on red side, where Kassadin can end up coming in, requires your opponents to draft very specific champions, and also requires Kassadin's surrounding teammates to also be somewhat specific champions. So The stars have to sort of align. In that regard, he'll still be able to be picked. It's just really sad to see them nerf him. Ramus base health growth increased, E cooldown now scales, so Ramus ends up getting a ruby crystal almost. Frenzy. Sorry, 1 second. Where he gets a ruby. Yeah, E frenzying taunt 12 seconds at all ranks to 12 to 10 seconds. So this only matters in the mid game. The mid-game transition, because I believe that Ramus maxes, or I think that it's one of those things like Eastern Fizz and Western Fizz. There used to be a difference in how the two different, like NA in Europe, I believe, used to max like W or Q on Fizz, and then Korea and China used to max E. I believe that Ramus is actually one of the same things. I think that Korean Ramus is max Q, and Western Ramus is max E. Although I could be completely wrong on that. I don't know the last time that I actually looked up Ramus. So this could be just something that I'm whiffing on. If you are playing it like how some of the Korean Ramuses used to play it, or even the Chinese Ramuses that would play on Ionia or other servers like that, this obviously is not a change until the mid-game. However, if you are maxing E, then I guess you're getting a little bit more value. You're going to have 1 second off. Congratulations at level 5. But is it really going to be noticeable inside of a gank? Because typically you're not using Frenzying Taunt twice inside of a gank, so it's not really that big. Rise, Q base damage decrease, Q overload, 80 to 180 to 65 to 165. Obviously this is going to impact him in the later stages, but also it's going to be extremely noticeable early on inside of some of his trades, so it just takes away a little bit of power from Rise. I do believe Rise also gets an indirect nerf in the form of Conqueror later on, but I do think that people are overreacting to the Conqueror nerf. Rise is still going to be able to function with Phase Rush, as well as I think that the healing is just basically luxurious in exchange for the damage that he ends up getting. Senna. So it's actually really sad to see you so soon. Base stats, health growth, she's actually losing quite a lot. Passive Absolution, Mistwraith drop chance 5.55% on minion Senna kills to 1.67% on minion Senna kills. Champion clones no longer drop Mistwraiths. Allied Bard can no longer kill Mistwraiths with his Q. Piercing Darkness, 50 to 170 plus 0.5 bonus AD to 40 to 160. Plus 0.4 bonus AD. W Last Embrace, root duration 1.45 to 2.25 seconds, scaling to 1.25 to 2.25 seconds scaling. In R Dawning Shadow, damage ratio 0.4 ability power to 0.5 ability power. These aren't the kind of nerfs that I think are going to cripple Senna. I do still think that she has one of the most disgusting kits in the entire game, and disgusting in a good way. And so I'm really glad to see that they're actually being somewhat cautious with actually trying to attack her. Going up against Senna and bot lane is going up against Caitlyn if Caitlyn learned magic powers. That's basically what it feels like down there. And Senna also even has the ability to go mid lane in certain situations, so I'm actually really glad to see these kind of changes on her. Sivir base attack damage increased 61 to... Great. Yuumi restores mana once again. Q cost increased, damage decreased. Yuumi no longer teleports with her anchor. E now grants attack speed, no longer stocks charges, and costs much more mana. Passive Bop and Block now restores 50 to 160, levels 1 to 18 mana. Base shield 50 to 300 to 60 to 400. Okay. Q Prowling Projectile cost is up by 10 at each rank. Damage ratio 0.45 ability power to 0.3 ability power, okay. And power damage 50 to 225 plus 0.65 ability power to 50 to 275 plus 0.4 ability power. So getting all of these base damages and having the amount go down on the ability power, obviously there's going to be a I don't know why I'm blanking on the word. All right, I am not very five-head right now, but basically, I feel like the direction that Riot's trying to make her go is into the support of Yuumi, rather than just going for the AP glass cannon kind of Yuumi. W, You, and Me now has a channel time, and obviously they're rewarding it more as well. If you get higher CDR faster early on, you get the supportive items, which end up costing less and aren't nearly as expensive. Yuumi will end up rewarding you. Now has a channel time of 0.25 seconds when attaching from an unattached state. That's actually really big. I don't think people realize how big that is Yuumi no longer, or I don't think people will take notice of that because it is 0.25, and when people see 0.25, they probably think of Zoe. Yuumi no longer teleports with her anchor when attached. Surprise electric rat face. Immobilizing Yuumi places this ability on a 5-second cooldown. Holy crap. Okay. Adaptive Force. Yuumi and her ally grant each other 5 to 13 Adaptive Force plus 4 to 16% of their respective Adaptive Force. Yuumi increases her ally's Adaptive Force by 12 to 20 plus 12 to 20% of her attached ally's Adaptive Force. That is really big. So again, they are intentionally trying to make Yuumi become just support Yuumi without any option of going down the AP route. Attack zooms grant 25 to 45% attack speed to herself or the anchored target. No longer stocks charges, no longer increases Yuumi's healing based on the target's missing health. Heal 30 to 70 plus 0.1 ability power to 70 to 230 plus 0.3 ability power. Okay, cooldown 18 to 14 seconds to 12 to 8 seconds. Cost 30 to 70 mana, 100 to 160 mana. So obviously your mana costs, yeah, they keep going up. Movement speed 25% decays over time, 15% no longer decays over time. Duration 2 to 3 seconds. Okay, I actually like all of these Yuumi's changes. I acknowledge that they're trying to go with a clear-cut identity and path for Yuumi. Obviously, I'm a little bit sad when stuff like that does happen because then you don't get to see some sort of creativity like the Garen Yuumi that we did end up seeing for a while, but I'm actually not going to complain. I really like what they did with Yuumi. Visual effects updates on Lux. Cool. Runes Conqueror. Buff duration decreased. Heal for ranged champions decreased to 8 to 6 seconds. Ranged champions now heal for 15 to 8% of the damage dealt. So the duration going down is kind of feels bad, man. There's a few champions that are ranged that are actually use this. Obviously, Graves, this is an indirect nerf to the Conqueror crit version of Graves. I thought that Fleet Footwork was supposed to be getting buffed this patch. That's what I had heard from someone, but it does not look like that's actually what is happening. Nonetheless, champions like Cassiopeia and Ryze, I think that a lot of people are overreacting to this sort of a change. Cassiopeia and Ryze used to both run Phase Rush and Comet. They weren't used to having the healing in the first place, and they ended up getting it with the Conqueror. A lot of their power comes from what Conqueror ends up offering. And so losing out on the healing, yes, it's going to suck. The duration going down 8 to 6 seconds, yes, it's going to suck. It doesn't mean that star prime candidates for this rune are magically just going to drop it because of these changes. I think that these are very balanced changes in that regard. Prototype Omni Stone. We've adjusted Omni Stone to be a little bit smarter at giving you the right keystone at the right time. Below are some guidelines you can count on. Warded. Now tells you how much damage it is dealt and has buffs granted. Buffs include lethal tempest attack speed, fleet footwork, haste, press the attack, conquers, and rage, hail of blades attack speed, predator. Okay, predator. More likely to get predator when not near enemy champions and less likely to get it when in combat with nearby enemy champions, okay? More likely to get our harvest when near low enemy champions. Hail of blades, more likely to get hail of blades when near low health enemy champions and building attack speed or... Oh, wow. They've given ways to manipulate this. This is actually really cool. More likely to get Conqueror when both you and your enemies have high health. Increased chance if you're a melee champion. Okay. Fleet Footwork. More likely to get Fleet Footwork if you are a low health and below level 9. More likely to get Glacial Augment if you have a Glacial item off cooldown. More likely to get Summon Airy when you have healing, shielding power and are near a low health ally who is in combat. So there's a few champions that I've thought about for Omni Stone. I think one of them, interestingly enough, is actually Alawi. As weird as that sounds, I also believe Gypsy Danger is back on Korea. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, if you watched my stream, that's one of the premier Alawi one-tricks on Korea that a lot of pro players and amateurs will look at how they're doing in order to try to get a generalized idea of maybe where Alawi is inside of the meta. Don't know Gypsy's ID offhand. It does have Gypsy in it, but then there's Korean words involved in it, so and it's not coming to me off the top of my head. So I think Alawi is one of those champions that might actually be able to use Omni Stone. Another champion that might be able to actually use Omni Stone to great success is maybe Twisted Fate. I can imagine that some of these are completely fine with Twisted Fate, and with the loss of Kleptomancy on Twisted Fate, his only other option currently is going to actually be Spellbook. And so in that regard, Omni Stone actually might be a viable path, but again, it depends on the ability to manipulate. But you're going to be basically looking for champions like that. I don't think that Omni Stone must forever be a for-fun keystone. I do think that they can find ways to keep tweaking it and eventually actually have it be a viable keystone for certain champions who are basically lacking a home for their room. Preseason follow-up changes. Ezreal is buffed ever so slightly. Q Mystic Slot base damage, 15 to 115, so it's up by 5. Okay. Omni Stone cooldown, 8 to 4 seconds for melee champions, 12 to 8 for ranged, 7 to 3 for melee, 11 to 7 for ranged champions. This is a really nice change. Death Stance will no longer infinitely proc Infernal Soul explosions. Okay. Sanguine Blade. Blood Pursuit attack speed 40 to 100% to 20 to 80%, levels 1 to 18. Total cost 3,000 to 3,100. This is fine. Drake's Ocean Heal 5 to 3%, missing per 5. Yes, Drake Kill Gold 125. This was really bad, by the way. This is really bad for a lot of reasons. So initially, I was actually really hyped about the dragons. If you guys remember my preseason talk on stream or something. The thing is Mountain can be really good in specific team compositions. But more often than not, Mountain actually ends up leaving much to be desired unless you stack it and then end up getting like Mountain Soul. Cloud Dragon is really, really specific. The more that I end up seeing it and the more I end up playing with it, Cloud is very, very specific. Ocean and Infernal end up being the best, but obviously Infernal is a shell of its former self, and so interestingly enough, the dragons kind of leave much to be desired unless you're threatening Soul. So having the gold loss on the Drake Kill Gold, if you end up getting 2 or 3, you're end up missing on basically an assist kill in terms of the game. Drakes are also in a really interesting spot where you can actually forego them depending on what's happening on the map, even though you would end up slowing down the Soul, just because they don't impact all that much early on. The 5% to 3% of missing health per 5 seconds, this is the one that was most interesting on the change. So Infernal's a shell of its former self. Mountain requires stacking and ultimately requires the Soul. Cloud Dragon feels good, but the applicability of it, especially in super high MMR, is very, very, very thin. You have to really have champions that really or urgently need what Cloud Dragon is trying to give. Now, obviously, all the souls are pretty cool, Cloud Dragon being the absolute worst soul, in competitive anyway, and obviously when I reference competitive, I also mean high MMR. Infernal, Ocean, both it feels almost impossible to lose with Infernal or Ocean. Mountain is then, I would say, probably the third, and then obviously Cloud. In terms of the souls, Cloud would be the fourth. But anyways, Elder Dragon's Immolation now properly calculates. Okay, Elder Dragon, Rift Herald, base damage 1,500 to 2,000, damage per level 175 to 125. Nice little changes there. Turret plates 160 to 120 gold, resistances. So this, along with what I just talked about with the dragons, is further slowing down the game, which I'm always obviously a very big fan of. Even though the game still feels very fast-paced, I feel like this is the thing that happens every preseason where we experience changes, where there is a lot of chaos, and because of all the new stuff and people are trying to figure out what champions are in the meta, what is actually balanced and what isn't balanced, that they end up feeling like the game is a lot faster than it needs to be. So I think eventually, maybe not in spring, maybe in summer, I have hopes, you'll start to see, if balance changes continue on this way, as historically they have, that the game will continue to slow down more and more, even if it does feel very fast right now. ARM balance change is not going to look at that. Duplicate username change, not going to look at that. Bug fixes. Okay, so what you guys are really all here for, Dawnbringer Karma. This is a very nice looking skin. I feel like there's another skin that looks almost identical to this, so I'm actually not really feeling this all that much, and it doesn't seem like there's any Easter eggs or anything going on in here. Yeah, so I don't know. That skin's just not really doing anything for me. Dawnbringer Nidalee, it's not really doing anything for me. I'll tell you much. I don't think this is... The only way this is a Dawnbringer is because I'm so horrified looking at it that I guess it would wake me up in that regard. But honestly, it's kind of putting me to sleep at the same time. So this Soraka one kind of looks interesting. Okay. Nightbringer Lisa, finally. Now, see, this is the Dawnbringer right here. I get there's probably something else going on with the names, but this skin actually looks really good. This looks like a really, really good skin. This looks like the skin chain, or the skin theme I'm forgetting. Is it Marauder? That's actually kind of like what this guy in the background looks like. This skin, obviously really good. And it's also Prestige Edition, so you got to get it. You got to let your opponents know. Nightbringer Lee Sin. This is fine. It has like a Vladimir-y sort of vibe to it. I feel like the coloring on the splash isn't what it should be. I don't know why it's pink instead of red. It's very bizarre how it's pink. I don't know why it's pink instead of red. I imagine that it's supposed to be red. But, okay, maybe not. Everything here is pink. I can't imagine the reason for that. Vladimir Skin actually looks really, really good as well. Nightbringer Aphelios, of course. I'm gonna give him the skins. This looks really cool. This skin looks legitimately very nice. I'm getting like an Alucard vibe. You know, the Dracula, Alucard, Castlevania. I know that he looks nothing like Alucard from Symphony of Night, but getting an Alucard vibe. That's one of the things that immediately popped into my head. Sugar Rush Zillion. Oh, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Even the gingerbread guy knows. Even this gingerbread guy knows. That's when it hits the spot. That's when you bite into something really sweet and delicious, and you're like, oh, I was not expecting that. And I don't think this gingerbread guy was expecting where he's about to go. I don't know. Sugar Rush Braum. I mean, honestly, how does Braum get a skin? Well, I guess because they just buffed him, right? So they got to sell some skins. But I was going to say, how does Braum get a skin before Ornn? Sugar Rush Ziggs. This is a really cute skin. What is going on here? That gingerbread guy just looked like he got impaled from behind. And it looks like this guy, he is crying in pain, and this guy's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. This is like ending up to be like a Key and Peele skit. I have absolutely no idea what is going on here. And then Hextech Swain is the Hextech. Makes me feel like StarCrafty. This is like if a Terran and a Protoss merged, so I guess that's kind of cool, but like, does this mean a Swain buff's coming in the next patch or something? Or like, how are they intending to sell skins? Or I guess you don't sell Hextech skins, right? You have to earn it from the boxes, but who's actually going to chase after a Hextech Swain? So anyways, let's recap really quickly. Philios looking like a really cool champion. Akali is not realistically touched, so I'm going to call this Placebo, Amumu Placebo. Braum change is obviously really, really nice. Probably is going to result in people playing him. Diana is the absolute best change of the entire patch. Likely going to be a top laner or a jungler, depending on the clear speed and all that other good jazz. Garen, whatever. Karma is a really nice placebo buff, I think, even though obviously the shield value is noticeable to an extent. I think that Karma has already been viable for a long time, so in that regard, I think it's fine. Kassadin, really, really sad change to see. Rammus, I mean, everything here was almost placebo, except for Diana, Aphelios' entrance. The Rise nerf is definitely going to be felt and noticeable. Cassiopeia goes untouched for whatever reason. Senna's change is very balanced, and I like that they're being very cautious. Yumi, I'm actually going to... you know what? Okay, I take back what I said. Diana's the best change of the patch. I'm not going to comment on Aphelios because of what I mentioned at the very beginning. Yumi is the second best and biggest change that we've had. And then obviously the runes, I really like the direction that they're going with the Omni Stone, and that's pretty much it. So hope you guys enjoyed the patch note rundown. This is one of the longer ones, so let's see what 10.1 has in store for us.